Okay, guys, thanks for joining us. This is Nolen Walker with Roofers Paradise. We're joined with Scott Miller of the Growth League. And Scott, I appreciate you coming on. The reason I wanted you on here is because, like I was telling you earlier before we started the podcast, we're both reached a level in our own businesses that we had such expertise in that we broke off into that expertise. Yours is helping really just manage the flow of a business, I presume. Mine was marketing. And once you get so good at something, and I presume also you had a business that you were successful in that you sold at one time, right?
Right, two of them actually.
Two of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so even though this is about roofing mainly, but Scott works in, storm restoration, and that works with Xactimate and really roofers and water restoration, all kinds of companies that work on a home after a storm. But the roofers definitely are in this genre of work, and you'd help a roofer as well, I presume.
Absolutely. Yeah. I help a
So
lot of different guys in different trades.
yeah, so the purpose of all this for me is to help roofers, and I think you're in a perfect position. So I thought you'd start out maybe by telling us how you got started and how you got into it, and then give us some stories of guys maybe that how you helped them and what transformed them, so that people can hear these stories and hopefully not make some of the same mistakes. But yeah, if you don't mind, tell me how you got started.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it, Noah.
No problem.
So I started in the restoration industry in 2005 as a franchisee of a national system, and I quickly grew, and that was important because it really led me to coaching. So here's what happened. First year, I was rookie of the year in the system, and as a result, I started to get calls from people all over the country asking me what I was doing, and could I help them, and how was I getting off to such a fast start. And so, a year or two of this is going on. I'm getting calls, really enjoying helping people, and 3 years into starting my business, I'm talking a lot at home with my wife about I'm getting the itch to start another business. And I was looking at other service related businesses, and one day she said, "Why are you looking at these other businesses? Every day you come home and you tell me these stories about how you help guys all over, and you love it. Like, I see you light up. I never see you light up when you're talking about your restoration business like you do when you're talking about helping people. So you have a coach. Why don't you start a coaching business and specialize in helping people in the restoration industry?"
Right.
So that's what I did, thanks to my wife. And so, to back up, about 6 months after I started my business, I realized this is the first time in my life that I don't have a boss. I don't have a manager. Nobody knows what I'm doing or not doing. And I'm a pretty disciplined person by nature, but
You
it was
seem
kind of,
like it, by the way. Just the few interactions we've had, you seem
yeah,
disciplined. Yeah.
yeah. So it was kind of gnawing at me, and I realized that a friend of mine had purchased and started an action coaching franchise about an hour away from me. And so I called him, and we talked for a while. And about 6 months into starting my restoration business, I hired, his name is Paul. I hired Paul to be my coach.
Yeah.
And he didn't know anything about the industry, but what he was great at was holding me accountable and giving me an outside perspective. And I knew that each week, Paul was going to say, "Did you do what you said you were going to do last week?"
Let me interject something here, because I want
Please.
anybody listening to understand why I wanted to do this podcast. So I got a coach, and I don't know if I told you this. I still have this coach,
Hmm.
about 4 years ago. And I was doing well in business, and I mean, air quote, well.
Hmm.
And my wife, I came home, is also talking to my wife about it. And she basically said, "Nolen, you're kind of incorrigible these days. You don't listen to anybody." And she said, "You should go get a business coach." And I honestly think my wife meant you should get a psychologist to tell
Right.
you what's wrong with you, so that he can tell you to agree with what I'm telling you.
Hmm.
That's not what happened, actually, at all. But I said, okay, I'll accept that criticism and I'll go get a coach. And so I called and got a fantastic coach. His name is Mike. And and I think any good coach can help you. Possibly. I don't think all coaches are good. I think you entered it from a better position than some people just say, I'm going to go get a coaching course and start coaching.
Right.
But you ran a business successfully, had a couple, had a propensity towards it, and then got your own coach and then learned it evidently. And so I didn't grow properly until I got that coach. I am so much more successful today with a coach. It's immeasurable. So my goal with Roofers Paradise is to help people accomplish their dreams and reach that version of paradise that they think is for them, which always, if the good thing about, progressing in life and business is the goals always actually go up,
Yep.
they get better. But I just wanted to interject here and say a coach is invaluable. And if you're not where you want to be in your life right now, you got to get a coach, because there's stuff you're doing wrong that you're repeating over and over again. You have no idea you're doing it. So I go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to,
No,
yeah,
that's fine.
yeah.
So 2008, I start a second business, and that's as a business coach. I went through a couple of coaching certifications, and I still continue to get continuing education certifications just to keep growing my skill set around coaching. Um, so that's how I got started in coaching, and then in 2013, I left the franchise system, became independent. In 2012, I started another business in auto glass, a mobile auto glass repair and replacement business. I sold the restoration business in 2017, and I sold the auto glass business last September.
Oh, wow.
While I had those other businesses, I always had usually around 10 clients at any given time. And now that I don't have those businesses, I'm free to use all my time for coaching, and I've got a lot more clients. So.
I got a question for you. So if you have a coach that's already done this, and do you think it lessens the need to be a franchisee?
I do.
Yeah. All
I
right.
do. Yeah. In a lot of cases, I feel like I can act as an inexpensive solution to being in a franchise system.
Yeah. So most roofers aren't in franchise, but a lot of restoration is.
Right.
I mean, let's say that you bring in $100,000 a month in revenue, and the franchise fee is 8%, and you're going to pay $8,000. And by the way, that's a lot more.
Forever.
Yeah. Say that again.
Forever.
Yeah.
Kind of. I kind of
Well,
joke.
forever, and it's not 8%. People misunderstand.
No.
It's a massive percentage of profit. It might be half the profit or all the profit, depending on the month.
I've worked
And
with franchisees that pay the franchisor more than their income, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. So your coach might be 1,000 or 2,000. I mean, and I would, from what I know about business, having expertise on your side. The problem is once an institution gets too big, a franchisor or anything, it dulls down the amount of services and that you get off of it. But one smart guy working with you and you're dogging it, not only will you not have to pay the fee, but you're going to end up making more revenue anyway and lowering your expenses. And I,
Yeah.
I, I don't know, but anyway,
Yeah.
so
And I'm not anti-franchise,
I'm not
but
either, but
yeah,
yeah,
but there are good ones and bad ones, just like every other business.
the problem I have with it, I think that if you need structure, it's so. Do you need it? Most people need a coach. Almost all people. And let me rephrase it. Everyone should have a coach. Everyone should have a coach. If you don't have a coach, you better have your mentors, or you're never
Right.
richer than your top 5 people. You'd better have a mastermind group or something, or you're just not going to progress in life.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So the richest people in the world have coaches and have mentors, and they one up it, and they have calls and accountability.
Yep.
Everybody does that's successful. So the franchise is good if you're brand new, you don't know anything, you're a baby,
Absolutely.
you have $100,000 somehow, and you're like, here's my money, please help me with structure. I remember when I started, Scott, I was there was a lady named Vicky Cooper Quinn, and I don't think she's alive anymore. And I remember her specifically because I was going into home security, and I didn't even know how to file my state paperwork with back then it was a Texas Department. No, it was a Texas Board of Private Security, Texas, then it became Texas Commission of Private Security, and it finally became Texas Department of Public Safety. That it got engulfed in like police work, but we had to get licensed, fingerprinted, and paperwork done. I mean, I think I was 19 or 20. I didn't know how to fill out the paperwork and take it to the state, but Vicky was working from home, and someone told me about it, and somebody could tell I was green. And luckily they didn't patronize me, and they helped me. They said, "Hey, Nolen, call Vicky and maybe she can help you." And so I was like, I'd really like to sell security systems and have a license and be in that business. And so Vicky for a fee helped me out. And it's so simple. Like I could do that stuff just like that. I can file my own stuff. I can go to I know the agent, I know the place that all the lawyers use to take the corporate paperwork across the street to the state in Austin. And I know how to file all my stuff, do the bylaws, the whole bit, no problem. But I didn't know any of that back then. And so if you need basics, franchise is great. If you're starting a business and you don't know basics, you're going to have some sort of help. And if you get bad mentoring or bad advice, man, this is not, not good. Man. And most of the advice that I see, Scott, on Instagram or YouTube or something where you just hear people railing about stuff is horrible advice. Like, oh, delegate everything, Nolen. Why are you still selling or even on these podcasts? And I always quit back as like, well, if you were to say that to me, I'd say, hey, Scott, the most wealthy people in the world still participate in their own marketing plans. You know, right. You had Steve Jobs doing this until the day he died. Right. He was worried about the packaging, the fonts, and the color, everything. Right. Absolutely. So there's certain parts of your business that you can systematize and delegate out. There's certain parts that you have to go in and look at all the time. Like,
totally agree.
So if you don't mind, for what's interesting for me here is that I know somebody can lose their whole business off of just who answers the phone, and that they leave and they're doing restoration work or storms came in and somebody just obliterates 80% of the calls. But tell me some stories, if you don't mind, if you have a story for me.
Right, absolutely. You've said so many things that triggered so many different thoughts in my mind. I'm not sure where to start. Well, let me start with delegation and what you can delegate and what according to me you can't completely delegate or abdicate. Right, you hand it off to somebody and then don't pay attention to it anymore. Yep. And I think the biggest area of concern that I have for business owners is around financial. They hand it off to maybe their outside accountant or bookkeeper and don't pay any attention to it. When I start working with clients, I'm always amazed at big businesses and small businesses, like multi-office, 10, 20, 30 years in business in some cases, where the owner sees a financial statement once a quarter, doesn't understand what he or she is looking at, looks to the bottom of the statement to see if they made or lost money, and that's it. Like, that's the extent of their financial understanding. They're not job costing. They just don't have a good insight into what's going on financially in the business because they've abdicated it to somebody else. They're just not paying attention to it. And so that is that's one area where I tend to start with a lot of my clients.
So I have a couple of stories here. When I was a kid and when I was 18, 19, my family had a flooring business. So I grew up in these types of businesses. My dad's a CPA, so I'm a little bit more analytical, but I didn't want to do that for a living. But we had a lady working for us who, I don't know why, because there was myself, my brother, my mother, and my stepfather. But my stepfather, for some reason, had let the bookkeeper, I'm a bookkeeper. There's no credentials. Back then she wasn't even back. Who knows what her record was or anything. And she had signing privileges, signatory, privileges. She was on the signature card at the bank, and that was a big deal back then. There wasn't any way to check this stuff. And finally, they realized that she was forging a signature. And my signature, I used to do in cursive back when kids learned cursive, right? And everybody else in my family had these big loops, and it was all, it was like this calligraphy looking signature, and mine was like, mine looked like a doctor had done it, and it was really, and somebody from the bank came in. They're trying to figure out whose signature she was forging to get money. And it's like, well, it's not Nolen's. His is hard to copy because he almost rips the paper in one spot. Right. But anyway, they get onto me, and she had stolen tens of thousands of dollars. This was back in late 90s, I think, or mid 90s. A second time, by the way, and I'm just telling these stories because, hey, I've been through
Right.
all this stuff, and I know you've
Right.
seen all of
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
My brother, and people say, delegating things, and I'll give a little hack on this for some people that you probably need Scott, somebody like this to help you. But I'll give one thing that I think can help in this. But my brother, not more than 5 years ago, had a lady, and I don't even think she had signing privileges, but she went online. This is a new version of this, and they did the auto deposits. Well, he didn't check it that often. She had doubled her paycheck like a year earlier, a year and a half earlier. They found it. They were going to prosecute her, and now she pays him $500 a month for like
Forever.
forever, like forever. It's like 12 years or 18 years
Right.
later, and he gets his money back. But this
Yeah.
lady who had befriended him and had talked to him, gotten personal. I remember she got personal with me on the phone. Not a big deal. I'm a little weird about that kind of stuff because I've been in business too long. I don't, I keep a line drawn. But she had gotten personal, and she robbed him. She robbed him blind and stuff. One thing I do, Scott, that's not as my dad's a CPA. I always had this aversion to accounting.
Mhm.
I can read this stuff. I go into it, but one thing I'll do is scan my debits, and I'll go every once in a while. I'll go, okay, I'm paying my credit card. I hate doing this with a passion. I scan it. I'm going to go, and my CPA, do you want me to do all this, Nolen? I'll do it. I'm like, yo, yeah, I see you stressed out. You got 3 or 4 businesses. I'm like, I'm sorry, Robin. I don't want to. I don't want to. I wish you could do it. I would,
Right.
but how do you know what all of my debits are? How do you know if that's a legitimate charge?
Yeah.
She doesn't even know to alert me to a charge that might not be legitimate. So I hate the charges that come from like Amazon or from I can't remember the app where you just send money to people, and it's like, what is it?
Right. You don't.
PayPal. It's like, what? Where
Hard to
did this
recognize
charge
what it is.
originate? Yeah. So,
Right.
but I probably don't do it like I should. But if you at least scanning debits, your money coming in. Problem is for some of these big jobs that come through, I'm assuming people might not even get paid on the job itself from the insurance company. I mean, these are huge problems, right? If they're not getting their money from them. Do you have issues like that at all with restoration on just them not collecting? Does that happen?
Um,
But not as common?
it's not as common. What? So there's two types of clients. A lot of my clients are getting paid by insurance companies, but some of them are dealing directly with the homeowner, getting paid from the homeowner, and having them recover from their insurance company.
Right.
So it depends. It's we could probably spend an hour just talking about payments, and it's another thing that a lot of times in the beginning when I work with a client, they've got no system for collections. They're kind of sloppy with how they're invoicing, what their collection procedure is. What do they do when it gets to X number of days? They don't have a process. So it's one of the things that I help them with. I have a client who was not job costing, and one of his managers stole over $200,000 by doing side jobs, buying
Wow.
materials for side jobs,
Wow.
using subcontractors for his own side jobs, and having them billed to the company.
Wow.
And in this owner, it just wasn't on his radar because there was no process for job costing.
I had an employee doing freelance labor for website design while being employed by me in my desk doing website design.
Hmm.
So doing someone else's work. Now, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but the roofers will have the crews will get paid by the square, by like the pallet, and they will dump the pallets off. You ever been through a neighborhood and seen a house built with like 10 different types of brick and rock?
Yeah,
Like
that's
2 or 3 different types of roofing. I mean, where do you think that material came
right.
from? You know? But they literally, you got to be careful on a lot of this stuff because they'll literally like will throw a whole thing of shingles out that could have been returned or to ABC
Right.
or to Home
Yeah.
Depot so that they can get paid for the installation of it. And I don't know. So what'd you do to solve
Yeah.
what procedures went in place for the $200,000 loss deal? I'm curious.
Sure. Like how to avoid that in the
Yeah, how do
future.
they avoid
Yeah,
that?
job costing. So one of the first steps is Most of my clients are using QuickBooks, so getting them to do job costing, labor and materials, job costed at the beginning of the job. We set what the budget is for the job, have a gross profit target, set the budget for the job, and then as payments are being made on that job, labor and materials, compare it to the budget.
Right.
So I don't want to get too far down in the weeds, but it's so that it throughout the project, longer projects, you know where you are, and the owner, and hopefully, in most cases, my clients, the owners are still the ones signing checks, and these are even, eight figure revenue businesses.
Right.
If not, like in the largest ones, there's very tight controls where multiple people are looking
Okay.
at checks that are being cut. But in most of my clients, it's the owner who's signing. But to set up a process where they're looking at what's been invoiced, the P&L against the budget, if we're using subcontractors, what was the agreed upon price that the subcontractor is going to charge for the job,
Right.
and making sure that it matches as payments are being made, and then also making sure that the material budget matches what the actual is, and then at the end of the job. So most of my clients, at least monthly, some of them are doing it as frequently as weekly, are reviewing as projects end
Right.
the budget against the actual
So I
with
want
the
to say
project
something
manager.
right here. So I personally think, and I'm sure you think this too, that it's worth it to own a business and be an entrepreneur, even though we probably there's no we work a lot, right? And it's always on the brain,
Yep.
and so it's not, you don't get to wash your hands of it when you go home. So a lot of times at dinner, you're talking about, you wake up thinking about it, you're reading books about it,
Yep.
but it's worth it. And there's
Absolutely.
my daughter. I have a daughter who's too smart for her own good on some stuff, and she's like, hey dad, why do I have to go to school? This is all BS, it's all bull. And I said, well, you need math and English and a couple things, but probably most of it is bull, and she said, well, why am I doing it? And I'm like, well, we all do it for one thing. So if enough people are doing it, you kind of have to go with the flow to integrate it in society. And if you want to do something else later, you're not going to be able to do that without some of these certifications. Beyond that, and she's like, well, I'll never use geometry. I said, you probably won't, because she's brilliant but doesn't like math. I said, you probably won't ever use geometry, but there's going to be things in what you do want to do. She said, well, I want to do what I want to do when I'm an adult. And Robert Kiyosaki made this comment. He's like, I'm sick of everybody saying, oh, do what you love, do what you love. And he said, I love him because he's always so direct and to the point,
Mm-hmm.
and he's basic. It's
Yeah.
basic but very poignant. And he said, I'm sick of all these people saying, do what you love. He said, you think I like writing books? I hate writing books, but books got me to where I wanted to go. So if
Yeah.
you want to be a roofer, if you want to be storm damage, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to have freedom, if you want to work on your goals and dreams, you're going to have to look at your expense reports and your job costing. You're going to have to learn
Absolutely.
some QuickBooks, and it's probably going to suck for these guys, by the way, because they're salespeople. Entrepreneur
Yeah.
brains don't want to do this stuff. You're the exception, and you may have entered into a business that is better for you, helping people with this stuff, but probably 90% of your clients have an aversion to this, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, they do. And I did too in the beginning. And, thanks to a mentor, I remember calling him one day and just being really frustrated, trying to look at my financials, and I wasn't capturing information correctly, so I wasn't able to make sense of it.
Right.
And he said, I've got the answer for you. So what is it? And he said, you need to get some basic understanding of how you're capturing data, and you need to look at your financials every month at a minimum,
Right.
cash and accrual, P&Ls, and really understand it. And then you're going to be able to start to strategize, figure out where you're doing well and do more of it, what's not going well, and fix it. But you can't ignore it, because then you just worry about it and you just hope things are going to get better. And as we know, hope isn't a strategy, right?
The problem here is that people are viewing it wrong. And if you don't fix this is the issue that, and you know this as you get older, if you're younger than me or younger than, I don't know how old you are, Scott, I'm
53.
49. I'm 49. So
I'm 53.
50. So when you turn 50-ish, you realize that you had to fix all this stuff anyway. Had it been fixed when you were 25 or 30 or 35,
Hmm.
you simply would have been successful earlier. And I don't, there's no other way for me to understand, to look at this, because I had made similar revenue. In fact, I made millions once, but didn't have a plan with the money. And all the money goes away. There's a lot of statements about this, that the fool and his money soon part.
Yep.
If you don't have a plan for the money, so when you're doing the job costing, I'm just giving some people some mental exercises. That job costing is the dream and lifestyle that represents you getting to the lake house or residual income or the apartment building that you want to buy. If you don't do this stuff now, you're going to do it later. And eventually, when you're younger too, you'll say things like, oh, I just eat unhealthy right now, or I smoke a little bit. Like when you get older, you're just a smoker, or you're
Right.
unhealthy,
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not so good at my books. No, you're a poor business person
Right.
that's not going to make money and accomplish your dreams. So my recommendation is to retrain your brain to say, when I look at financials, when I job cost, when I do this once, this is the most important task to get me to the next level so that I can accomplish my dreams. It's not my favorite thing to do, but I love it because it helps me get to where I
Right.
go. I know I'm gonna get to where I want to go if I do this thing.
Yeah. No, and it makes me think of, sometimes clients come to me because they know they want to sell, and it might be because they talk to a broker, and the broker, they thought they want to sell now, right? And they go to the broker and they have this thought of, well, I've got a, whatever, a $10 million top line revenue, and they've
You
got a
can
sense of
sell their
sell
business.
their business, right?
Okay,
Time to
okay,
exit, right?
okay, okay,
And
yeah,
they talk to a broker, and they think they know how much their business is worth. They talk to the broker and get a rude awakening, because
mhm,
in a lot of cases, business, the top line doesn't really have all that much to do with what the business is worth. It's what the net benefit to owner is, or the another acronym SDE, seller's discretionary income. It's a multiple of what the owner is able to take out of the business. And you
right.
could have the biggest top line revenue and not make any money, or not make much money, and your
You,
business isn't worth very much.
you can.
So the other reason, and a lot of your listeners might not be anywhere close to selling, but they will at some point, right?
Right.
So why wait until you're ready to sell to start systemizing your business, making sure that you understand your financials and you're improving the financial picture of the business? Don't
Yeah.
wait until it's time to sell. I'm working
So
with a new client now that is ready to sell within the next 2 years, and they they've got a lot to fix in a relatively short period of time, and I'll help them. I just, before our chat, because I wanted to talk about this a little bit, this idea of people coming to me that have an idea of when they want to sell. Maybe it's in the next year, maybe it's in the next 3 to 5 years.
yeah.
5 of my clients sold last year,
Wow.
and I
Very
helped,
cool, man.
and
Yeah.
3 of them came to me. I wasn't coaching them already. They came to me and they said, I'd like to. I heard through the industry that you might be able to help me get my business ready to sell, get it more profitable, get some systems in place, lighten my load, so that for the new owner, when they're looking at the business, I don't have to give them a laundry list of the things that they're going to have to do. Can you help me start to pare that down
Wow.
to make
Yeah.
my business more attractive? Because that's what a broker told me. So I really enjoy helping people just get these businesses, these service businesses, roofing, restoration, storm chasing. They're really, I don't have to tell your listeners, they're hard. It's tough work, right?
Right.
You might as well maximize what the industry will allow in terms of profitability, so you can do the things that you want to do, like you said, the lake house, the apartment building, more
Whatever
more
they want.
time with your family, whatever the case may be. That's what I really enjoy helping people with.
So I want to say something here. I'll give my perspective on this, and there's some things that were in between the lines here. For one thing, it's a huge testament to Scott at the Growth League that he prepares businesses for sale. That's a whole different level of coaching and skill sets that a lot of people aren't going to have. Secondly, somebody doesn't want to buy your business if it isn't proceduralized. So what when business brokers go to sell a business and they package something, and this is called a blue sky business, meaning there's really no inventory. They might have some blowers and stuff, but there's very little, there's no hard asset like real estate to wrap around. You might get an SBA loan, but it's more difficult. And if you want to get a higher multiple for the business, you're going to have procedures. Otherwise, the guy's just buying this blue sky stuff, and he has to step in and become an employee, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every business owner, in my opinion, is going to work no matter what. There's no true thing as passive income unless you're just rich on a trust fund and it is managed with a stock portfolio. So that beyond that, if you're running real estate, running anything, you're working. However, if you don't have any procedures in place at all, it's a very unattractive business to purchase. Nobody wants to buy that. And if they do buy it, you're going to get a multiple and a half as opposed to 3.5, right? And so, and it's tougher to get a bank loan on it and everything. The banker steps in and says, "Hey, this guy that's running this is ridiculous. You know, there was some revenue here, but what is it? You know, it's just him hustling." So, and then the other part of it is that we talked about expenses. I wanted to talk about again.
Mm-hmm.
You can make the same exact amount of gross income and have no profit, or the same exact amount and have fabulous profits. And little things. And to me, I used to joke that I didn't buy Ferraris or, I didn't go on extravagant vacations to waste money or buy Ferraris or do drugs or do any of these weird things that you think about when people say, "Oh, they're blowing all the cash." It's like, no, I didn't do any of those things when I lost money in business. I basically rented too big of an office, signed too long of a lease, hired people to answer the phone that shouldn't have been hired, that were redundant or didn't check up on their phone calls, or I hired salespeople that were unqualified, that had poor conversion, or I didn't need the salesperson in the first place. It was those sorts of things. And then you'd expand and then raise these unnecessary expenses and not proceduralize and check things, and the profit just gets obliterated. You make no money at all. And on paper, I call it barroom napkin calculations. I don't drink, but I mean, it's what it reminds me. Oh man, if I can do I did 5 last month. If I can do 100, I'm Elon Musk. I'm huge. And then you'll set down that path with no plan, no procedures, not understand this stuff, and you can go and you'll spend all your energy and time, and in 8 years you wake up and in a world of hurt, no money, all your energy gone. I mean, that's it literally is. Or you're like, "I'm pretty successful, Nolen, Scott. Why do I need that?" And so, well, what's your definition of success? What was your original dreams that you had? And if people are honest with you, they're nowhere near what they wanted to do. Do you do that with people? Like when you start up with them, do you say, what do you want? What did you originally want? How much money do you want to make?
Absolutely, yeah. One of my first questions is, why did you get into this business? Why did you probably had a job before.
Right.
Why did you leave and start your own business?
So you had to rekindle their dream.
That fire, right.
It's probably in shambles by the time they call you.
Right. They've lost sight of it, haven't thought of it. They're just in the day to day, and it's so much of it, and so much of it is paying attention to finances. There's a lot of things that are important, but boy, that's a big one. And then making sure that you're clear with your team on the expectations. Having targets, sharing what the expectations are. A lot of times when I start with a client, they'll have complaints about their project managers and say, like, we're not making as much money as I think we should or we could, and I ask them, like, well, can you articulate what your expectations are, very clearly?
Right.
What do you mean? Well, for example, do you have a profit target on your jobs? No. Okay. So how does the guy running the job know what's expected of him? if you don't even know, right? So a lot of times it starts there.
I have a problem with this because I talk too much. And I think Mark Twain said something like the key to success or a successful, articulating your point is brevity. Like
Yeah.
I think it was Mark Twain. I mean, he had all kinds of sayings, but it was just
Yeah.
be brief.
Right.
So, but I'll go in and have like a 10-minute conversation with someone, but I only need to speak for like 18 seconds.
Right.
And like, what did Nolen want from me? But it is important to, I mean, if you'll have all different types of personality running a business, but that's why you put in some procedures too. It's like you go through and like check off this list of things. I'm going to go talk to my project manager and we might talk about a bunch of stuff, but I've got to cover these 6 points.
Right. Exactly. And just, I try to help people keep it really simple. Like keep a simple scorecard of, the 2 or 3 most important numbers for each person, including you as the owner.
I want to say too, like if you prepared your business like you're going to sell it, even if you never sell it,
Mm-hmm.
business runs well and it's profitable, right? So,
I'm laughing because when I sold my business, it wasn't the first attempt that I sold it. So I, through a friend of a friend, I found somebody that was interested. Didn't use a broker. Was going through the process myself, and he kept stalling. The short version of the story is he didn't buy it. He wasn't able to get financing.
okay.
But as I was getting the business ready to sell, ready to transition out of the business over the course of that year, I wanted to, the kind of the concept of you clean up before company comes over. You want the house to look great before. So in this year, I'm thinking to myself, I want to be able to look myself in the mirror when I hand over the keys to this business. I want to leave it in as perfect shape as I can for this person. So in the course of the year, we get 2 weeks before closing, and he calls me. He says, "I need to delay again. I'm having some problems with financing, but don't worry, it's going to happen."
Right.
And I said, "You know what? We're done. I'm not selling it to you. We're done." Because leading up to it, I was starting to get seller's remorse. I was thinking, why am I selling this?
I can get more money for it. Yeah.
Well, no, it was why sell it? I've focused so much on building the team, building systems, delegating away all the insignificant things that I had been doing in the business,
Right.
delegating those things away, not being the backup when that person was out who I delegated to. So now it's like I've really created a business that I don't know if I do want to sell it. And I ended up keeping it for another several years before I
Oh,
did
good.
ultimately sell it. And
I presume sold it for a lot more money as well.
I did. I
Yeah.
did. But, the point is, you might get to the point if you really build a business that's successful and that can give you the kind of lifestyle you want and the type of financial outcome that you want, you might change your mind. You might not want to sell it.
And it isn't really whether you did or didn't, but if you don't run a business like this, you're not going to make money. Nobody's going to want to buy it anyway. And if you do
Right.
make, a lot of people are egotistical about this, like, I do fine. It's like, no, you don't. You make
Right.
$1 million a year. You could make 900,000
A
by
lot of
just
times people are egotistical about talking about what their top line is too.
yeah. I mean, they don't want to tell someone I don't do well, but I mean, if
Right.
somebody's listening to podcasts that do well, I'll tell you a story that it's been a long time. My first time, I mowed lawns and painted curbs when I
Mm-hmm.
was young. That's what I started doing, and that's another thing too. I had a podcast guest on yesterday, and he had said, "Hey, people need to have a stable base before they start." No, they don't. Most entrepreneurs have nothing before they start. They barely make it day to day, and then it gets better. So I literally painted curbs and mowed lawns, and then when it got cold outside, I would be in fear for my life, that I was going to be home
Mm-hmm.
or something. And I got into home security, like I was telling you earlier, and I had a guy that was in the death throes of installation. Like he was a horrible install. He's just being a
Mm-hmm.
bad guy. I don't know if he's a bad person, but he's bad right then. Okay, he was out back then. You had to hardwire the alarms,
Yeah.
and this was in a mobile home. The lady's husband had died. I was probably 23 or 4, and I was bumping along, not doing very well at all, but I was selling alarm systems. And I remember getting an installer one at a time, and they would since I didn't have many resources, they would take advantage of me. And if I had to do it over again, I just would have stood my ground right then with that one guy. So you're going to do it this way we do it.
Right.
Because to not manage somebody properly that's starting to do that to you, they would go into what their death throes of the relationship and do horrible installations for people that I
Right.
was responsible for. This lady called me and cried. The guy had been out there for about 5 days. His job should have taken one day, and he should have been in and out. And she wanted the house secured. And I felt bad finally. I felt bad for someone else's property. And it was about, it might have been 24, 25. You have to actually work for a while and buy stuff and go, oh, I need to do a good job for service. So there's some stuff you have to do before you even get to this point. And to have concern over the way you provide service and care about people, I went out and learned how to do installs that day so that I could provide proper service. And it was the first time, and my business took off like a rocket, and I ended up doing like $1 million a year in net profit long time ago, because I took responsibility and I learned the positions. And I just want to tell that story because people listen to this. It's like, you can't just go sell. You can't just so go, hey, we don't, it's okay to have mismatched baseboards. And no,
Right.
it's okay to put them back up and not caulk them back. None of that's okay, And so we went through, I gave that lady extra equipment. I punished myself a little bit for not doing a good job. That was before, she could go online and trash me very
Right.
well. And so I took responsibility. I learned how to do a takeover, which required me to learn all the programming. I learned all the programs of all the alarm systems, and I was the first true takeover company that didn't rip the equipment out in Dallas-Fort Worth. And we installed 23,000 alarm systems. But it came the day I woke up and said, not only am I going to just sell these things to people, I'm going to make sure the service is good. I fired that guy, of course, and then got somebody else in, and the business took off. But anybody that, I went and bumped along in business, making way less money than I should have, up year, down year, not knowing what. And when I got that coach, the coach, it seems redundant at this point, every Wednesday at 2:30 for an hour, and that guy keeps me in check. He helps me a little bit with my psychology. It's mainly an accountability thing and me functioning in the business to reach my dreams. He does ask about how I'm doing, because he's got to, if he's gonna help me all the way through everything. But it's just it's a very necessary thing. I wish someone had taken me earlier and said, hey, go get a coach.
No, so since 2006, when I hired my first coach, I've had a coach in my life almost the whole time since 2006. I remember when I first started, I told my best friend from grade school, I was telling him about this. He had never heard of a business coach, and to be honest, it was pretty new to me also. But he's like, wait a second, you're going to pay this guy to talk to you for an hour every week? He's like, take me out for a beer, I'll listen to you all night.
Yeah, that's
so,
it.
but huge help. And even when I have it on my calendar every week, when my coach is away at a conference or on vacation or something, I still have the coaching appointment on my calendar, and I kind of make believe I'm still having the call. I'll go over my notes, go over my commitments. I'll email him an update, because once you break that momentum, it's tough, just like anything else, right? You get hurt and you stop going to the gym. It's hard to get back to it, or you fall off the wagon when about eating healthy, and it's hard to.
You can probably hear the coach's words in your ear.
Absolutely,
Should I do this? And then the coach is like talking.
Absolutely. Yep. I can do both sides of
Yeah.
at this point, but still a lot of value in it.
Yeah, no, it is. So it sounds like we're at a good, time to wrap up of its own volition here.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything you want to end up with, to give anybody advice? I do want to say too, before we end up just at the end, is that the Scott Miller of the Growth League, and everybody should have a coach. If you can look him up online, he's got a website, and it just type in the Growth League. I looked you up, and all your information popped up.
You can find me on LinkedIn also. I would say if you're curious, if you've never had a business coach, or if you've had a business coach that hasn't helped folks that are in the trades before and just want to have a conversation, just get in touch. Happy to talk to you and find
I,
out.
do
If you
you
tell me a
do
little bit about your challenges, I'll give you a sense of whether or not I think I can truly help you.
do you do a free evaluate, a free
I do.
meeting? Okay.
I do. Yeah, it's usually, typically what happens is we schedule a half-hour call,
Okay.
get to know each other a little bit, the potential client share some information about the business, and then we'll decide at the end of the call if it makes sense to have a second call.
Okay.
And if that's the case, we schedule a 1 hour call. Also, there's no charge. Really, get into more details and then go from there.
Yeah, most coaches, in case people don't know, will do a free, first meeting, and really it's an interview for that person too, because the coach is taking his own personal time, might not have the ability to see more than 10 or 20 people at a
Yeah.
time, and sometimes it's not a good fit. Sorry about that. With my
Right.
computer.
No, that's okay. It's a good point. Sometimes I talk to folks and it's not a good fit. And that's usually around, it almost feels like somebody has almost forced them on the idea
Yeah,
of,
yeah, I did.
and
Yeah.
right, like, so maybe their wife or their girlfriend says you should really talk to a business coach. And I get the sense that they feel like they know it all already.
Yeah, and as far as coaching's concerned, I mean, it's been invaluable. It's just been invaluable. There's all sorts of things I do and stay up on. I think just podcasting and all this is fantastic now that people can get this access to information, but it still doesn't hold you accountable. And
Right.
there were things that I was doing horribly wrong. And most of mine was more simplistic, but there was something about getting a coach. My profits just seemed to go up for starters. Like I just fixed some little things. And then one of the things that my coach did, Scott, that I always loved was one of his big deals is anchor yourself to your dreams. And so he checked what my dreams were. And then and I did. I started buying real estate in a certain place that anchors to my dreams. So it's my paradise, my version of paradise. And I use those properties for Airbnb rentals and stuff, and it gets me there all the time. But it also gives me purpose for when I work each day. So those days that I wake up and I'm like, God, I'm 49. I've been doing this forever.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it today. I'm sick of it. The monotony of it is killing me. And the thing that sucks about business sometimes is that when it gets monotonous, you're finally the master of it, but it takes that long. It takes that long to get that good at it. Right. But
Right. Yeah.
but when those days come, it's like it's a privilege to sit here with you and do this because it's getting both of us. We both have dreams that we're you and I are in the business of helping other people with their dreams, but it helps us accomplish our own. And the reason we don't mind sitting here talking is because we know what it's going to lead to.
Right.
And there was a Jordan B. Peterson. I love following. You ever follow him on?
I've listened to him. Yeah.
I love him because he's not a self-centered motivational speaker. He's a clinical psychologist helping. He truly wants to help people, and he's not trying to on the side sell books or get you to buy it. So he made a comment that's just like, doesn't matter if it's going to work or not, just do something. Life's too short. You don't need a 1 year sabbatical. You just need to get going with it. Just get started with something. You think you might like it, do it. So you and I sit here and we know at our age, whether or not this is fruitful or not, it leads somewhere and it goes to the next step. And people need to do that in their own business. They need to take moves. They need to change. If they're stagnant and they don't know what's wrong, they need to pick up the phone and call a coach. That's what they're there for. It's what people need people too. They grossly underestimate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And today's world where content is limitless. Like you can watch YouTube videos on roofing probably for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
But that, like you said, you don't have the accountability.
It doesn't work for some reason all the way to where people need it. People need to have human interaction, have accountability. And I can't explain it, but it's so very, very helpful. And I even some weeks I don't want to call my coach, but I can't deny what my coach has done for me. It's uncanny how, but someday I'll feel like I'll open up and tell people what it's done to me, but I don't want to tell people my financial stuff and like, hey, I've got this and I've got that and I've got
Right.
these things
Yeah.
that guys like to, like I've done all this stuff, but it's been great. So I appreciate you coming on and
Pleasure.
with me. Yeah, I think this went well. Jason that works with me always makes fun of me because I judge the podcast after we're done, but this was good.